Holmes? My God, Holmes!
Now, my dear Watson, you know you won't let me have the medicine that I truly crave.
You're not ill, Holmes?
No. In fact, I'm feeling much better, although I do seem to have rendered myself unconscious.
How did you manage to do that?
Was trying to determine how long I could sustain full consciousness whilst deprived of oxygen.
I'm almost afraid to ask your findings.
Rather difficult to determine, although I'd wager it was somewhere within the area of 7 minutes and 19 seconds.
As your physician, Holmes, I'm obliged to condemn your actions. You could have caused yourself irreparable damage.
And as my friend.
In Afghanistan, I observed a street magician submerged in a tub of water for 10 whole minutes, without drawing a single breath.
Then you're saying that I can do better.
No, I did not say that.
You see, the key is in the meditation. To have full control over one's mind and body. It is proved invaluable with the Bartitsu.
Are you expecting anyone, Holmes?
Yes, so that is likely Inspector Lestrade here wrote to say that he would be calling this morning. Let's see. Yes,
Inspector! Dr. Watson.
My dear Inspector Lestrade, how very good it is to see you. As a visit from you usually precedes several quid in my pocket.
It's 10:30 in the morning, Holmes, and I've been up for many hours. I don't have the energy to verbally spar with you this morning.
Perhaps some coffee is in order then.
It's 10:30, man. Make it brandy.
Yes, of course, as you will.
Thank you. Have you read the Morning Chronicle yet, Holmes?
No, although I do believe that Watson has procured the second edition.
Don't bother. I can summarize the only interesting story that's in it today. There was a young woman murdered in Crow's Court this morning. A public house singer by the name of Sally Sainsbury. She was attacked, strangled, and mutilated beyond reasonable recognition.
Like the Ripper.
No, Doctor. The Ripper was more methodical in his work. This one here was much cruder, and I dare say a lot more vicious.
Is there a suspect?
Yes, we have a man in custody.
Then I cannot see how it is that I can be of assistance to you, Lestrade.
The murder itself is secondary to the odd circumstances surrounding it. It's this blasted article.
Well, what of it?
It's a faithful account of the murder of Sally Sainsbury. Right down to the position of the body, the name of the fellow who found her.
Then what is it that perturbs you, my dear Lestrade?
In order for that story to have made it to the second edition of the Chronicle, it would have had to have been written and typeset by 2 a.m. in the morning. A full 2 hours before the actual crime took place.
What an intriguing little problem you have brought us, Inspector Lestrade. No doubt the man in custody is the man who wrote the article.
Yes, a one Parker Raleigh. He's been with that publication for just under a year, but he's managed to develop a reputation for being on top of current events real quickly.
Did he know the victim?
Says he didn't.
Did he have any viable reason for killing her, then writing about it?
Nothing likely.
Then why is he sitting in a cell?
Because I have to give the public something, Holmes. You remember Whitechapel. We can't have that happening again. I'm obliged to follow orders. But remember, it just doesn't sit right with me, gentlemen.
Then you don't think that this Parker Raleigh had anything to do with the killing in Crow's Court?
No, it's my instinct, Holmes. It's just too easy.
There is hope for you yet, Inspector.
Will you help me? Quietly.
In the interests of a man who sits falsely accused, how can I say no?
Excellent. Are you free today?
Watson,
Oh, I can be available, yes.
we are at your disposal, Inspector.
Excellent. There's no time like the present. Doctor?
In the interests of a wrongly accused man. Admit it, Holmes, you're intrigued.
Much more intriguing than choking in the air from my lungs.
Where to first then, gentlemen?
To a blood-stained carriageway in Crow's Court.
Cabby!
At ease, Wilkins. It's not the Queen. And save me some of that stuff, will ya?
Inspector?
This is the carriageway where Sally Sainsbury drew her final breaths, gentlemen.
Inspector Lestrade, how can you expect me to conduct a proper examination of the area if your officers have trampled through the scene of the crime?
We're all obliged to do our jobs, Mr. Holmes.
Where has the body been taken?
To the morgue.
I should like to examine it. The killer's technique could provide a good deal of information.
I doubt he's a medical man, if that's what you mean, Doctor.
Yes, he was rather messy. There's sawdust everywhere.
Still, I think it would be beneficial.
Of course. I'll arrange for it.
Inspector Lestrade, do you know if standard issue Metropolitan Police boots are still provided by G&S Brow of Birmingham?
Fairly certain, Holmes. Why? Have you found something?
A good deal. Several sets of footprints, relatively fresh. These are the girls. She comes in through the gates and stops here to pick up something she's dropped, her handbag perhaps. And these are the killers. He wasn't waiting here. Rather, he followed her in from the street and made his way relatively close to her before she knew that he was there. And then he made his attack. He must be rather strong. As you can see, there is very little sign of a struggle. No, he did the deed right here and exited the way he came.
And what of the police boots?
How many officers have been through here?
I've had 5 men assigned to this scene.
That explains these. And this set is yours, a finer shoe. Lob's, I should think.
Yes.
And another set, a man's.
Oh, that'd be the bloke who found her. Rathbone's his name.
Excellent. These are all easily accounted for. What concerns me most is what's over here.
More prints?
Yes. 5 sets, and all of them male. And one of them is lame. You can tell by the distinct impression of the walking stick. But they're not moving. One of them shuffles forward, but is called back, likely by the man with the cane. They're standing there for quite some time. You can tell by the depth of the impressions. Yes, they linger. And then they leave. How very curious.
And what do these footprints suggest to you then, Holmes?
That something foul is definitely afoot.
This is not a laughing matter, Holmes.
I'll agree, Inspector. As it appears that Sally Sainsbury is the victim of the most heinous motive for murder that I've ever seen. Murder as a spectator sport.
They watched as she died. It's hideous.
I think you've got quite a problem on your hands here, Lestrade.
Do you realize the implications of what you're saying? The population will go into a panic if they think there's a roving pack of murderers roaming the streets at night.
None of these men got their hands dirty, Lestrade. No, they simply observed from the darkness.
Shadow watchers.
Yes. I think we've seen all there is to see here for now.
Where would you like to go from here, gentlemen?
I should like to meet with the man in custody.
That can be arranged.
And if you don't need me, Holmes, I should like to examine the corpse.
An excellent idea, Watson, and we can meet again at Baker Street this afternoon.
I'll gain you both access. As for me, I've got another sleepless night ahead of me.
There are none who shall sleep safe until the perpetrators of this terrible crime are removed from the streets of London. A terrifying thought, gentlemen.
Holmes?
What if it's just begun?
Good morning, sunshine.
Inspector Lestrade, expression on your face does not infer that you're here to set me free, so you'll forgive me if I don't rise. And who's this you brought with you? The hangman?
This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street.
Then you really do exist. I've often thought that you might have been an invention of Dr. Watson's. I've read some of the stories in the Strand magazine. Tell me, Mr. Holmes, are you really as brilliant as your chronicler suggests? Or are you as common as the rest of us?
Somewhere in between, I should like to think. Watson has a tendency towards embellishing certain of my abilities.
Are you a fraudster then?
Let us hope not, Mr. Raleigh, as I may very well be the only chance you have of clearing your name.
Someone will have to face justice for this, Raleigh, and I told you, it's not going to be me.
I've already told you where I stand, Lestrade. I can't tell you any more than I have.
He refuses to name his sources, Mr. Holmes.
And why is that, Mr. Raleigh? With so much on the line.
Because there is no need to drag another innocent party into this mess.
Who is she?
Suffice it to say, Mr. Holmes, that I have a source who has been very kind in providing me with information, very accurate information in the past, and I had no reason to suspect anything different when I met with them last night.
You have a source that can, apparently, see into the future.
But that would be preposterous.
Has it occurred to you, Mr. Raleigh, that you may just be a pawn in a very macabre game? I do hope the individual that you're trying to protect is worth what you are putting at stake, sir.
If I am wrong, so be it, on my own head and no one else's.
You find yourself in a most compromising situation, Mr. Raleigh, and I'm not entirely convinced that I can help you. You're not making this easy for either of us. But we shall press forward. I'm finished for now, Inspector.
If you're sheltering someone else, you're a fool.
It's the great Sherlock Holmes. I'm sure he'll figure it out.
If I were you, I'd be praying that he does.
And if he doesn't, Inspector?
Well, like I said, Raleigh, I'm not going to be the one to hang for this. He's a bloody fool, Holmes.
Albeit an impassioned one.
Well, back in the old days, I'd have made him talk. But nowadays, with things being as political as they are, well, what do you suggest, Holmes?
When in doubt, Lestrade, there is always Paganini.
So, you think that this Paganini fellow might have done it?
Have you come to ask forgiveness from the Lord your God?
The Lord will judge me in my own time, Father Anthony, and on his own terms. It is you who shall be judged on this plane.
Why have you come here?
This morning, you almost intervened with the program in Crow's Court. And now we have learned that you spoke of our endeavors, shared our plans with one not worthy. You are a weak man, Father. And a weak link in the chain threatens our very existence.
Surely you will not harm me in the house of God?
The Lord will show you no mercy for what you have done, Father. This is not your time, though it approaches swiftly. First, there is a woman who lives in Belmare Garden.
Evelyn? No.
Evelyn, yes, that's the one.
Oh, Evelyn! Evelyn.
I wish that you'd never come to me all those months ago. I wish I'd never met you.
But I've loved you so much. I've given you so much. We've shared so much.
All that we've shared is your indulgence. You're not the first priest to call me, nor will you be the last.
How can you say these things to me? How could you have betrayed my trust?
You came to me drunken with a loose tongue, bragging about those terrible people and the horrible things you were going to do. I didn't believe you at first. I thought it was part of some macabre fantasy, but there was something in your eyes, something that frightened me more than the words you spoke or the deeds you described. It was sincerity. It haunted me after you left. Now, dear God, that poor woman...
Who did you tell?
I shouldn't be here.
Evelyn, who did you tell?
Better man than you, supposed child of God. You're nothing but the son of Satan.
No, I'm a good man. I tried to stop them. I tried to help her.
Who, Anthony? The woman who's butchered this morning? Whose life was taken from her in the cruelest of ways?
I know that I will burn in hell for all eternity for my sins.
Now you tell me I might be in danger.
Evelyn, listen to me. You can't understand the full extent of this, how deep this runs. If only you knew how powerful.
But I don't want to know. I never wanted to know. Why can't you see? Why can't you understand?
But Evelyn, I love you so much.
I don't love you.
Evelyn, you know I love you. I've always loved you. I will always love you, Evelyn. Evelyn, you're breaking my heart.
Consultation notes in the case of the woman who was murdered tomorrow. After our examination of the scene in Crow's Court, I attended the district morgue where I was able to examine the remains of the unfortunate Miss Sally Saintsbury. 2 bodies?
One body in 2 acts.
In hindsight, I wasn't prepared for what I was about to see. My God. Her wounds were extensive.
Holmes! The door, Holmes! Bloody Paganini. He's been at this all night.
Inspector Lestrade, I didn't hear you come in.
There's been another incident, gentlemen.
Another murder?
This one's a double, and it's much more sensitive than the first.
And you're certain that it's the same killers?
This time we found the same sets of footprints. Well, 4 of them with the cripple.
I never said crippled, Inspector. Simply lame.
Duly noted. There's the gutting and mutilation of the bodies,
Removal of certain organs?
piled neatly around the corpses.
And the unfortunate victims.
Well, that's where this case becomes exceptionally sensitive, Holmes. The first, a professional mistress by the name of Evelyn Norwood, and the other, a father, Anthony Jeffers.
Father? You mean...
This case is getting darker by the minute, Lestrade.
Yes, a reporter's already come by from the London Times. They're, calling it the, Adam and Eve killings.
The affair of the priest and the prostitute.
What do you think, Holmes? Is the killer making a statement?
Perhaps. Although maybe this was an act of necessity. What do we know about the young Father Jeffers?
He was the resident priest at the Church of the Immaculate Trinity. Until last night, that is.
Well, looks like Parker Riley's off the hook then.
Evidently. Although I wouldn't release him quite yet, if only for his own protection.
Why? Do you think whoever committed these atrocities might have it in for him then?
Perhaps. Although I think we should err on the side of caution for the moment. I would, however, like to pay another visit to Mr. Parker Raleigh to discuss his own relationship with the late Evelyn Norwood.
What do you mean she's dead? How?
Severing of the superior vena cava. She bled to death.
Was it an accident?
It was no accident, Mr. Raleigh. Evelyn Norwood was no doubt murdered by the same hands that took the life of Sally Sainsbury.
Why? Why Evelyn?
What do you think, man?
Covering his tracks. But the information came from elsewhere. Evelyn was just a filter.
The man who provided her with that information is also dead.
Who was he?
That is irrelevant now, Mr. Raleigh. What is of the utmost importance is you providing us with all the details pertaining to your last rendezvous with the late Evelyn Norwood.
But what good is that now? Yes. Yes, you're right. I understand. Because it's not going to end, is it? This is bigger than Crow's Court, isn't it? A lot is going to be said about Evelyn when more of her past comes to light. But I knew her in a different way than the other men in her life. Yes. Yes, we were lovers. And I can't deny that she had several important men, paying men. And sometimes they would let slip some important information. And sometimes Evelyn would let me take full advantage of their secrets. And wonders for my career. But I didn't use Evelyn. If that's what you think. I genuinely loved her. And I think she did me.
But what of the murder in Crow's Court?
That was different, wasn't it? So dark. So strange. When I called on her that night, I could see that she was markedly affected by the whole business. What's wrong?
Mia, it's nothing, darling. Now, where were we?
Evelyn, I know you by now. If I'm paying for our time together, the least you can do is be honest with me.
No money. I don't want anything from you tonight.
What is it? I've never seen you like this before. I think you're frightened of something.
Why would you say that?
Because I know people. I can read people. It's a part of my craft.
Yes, there is something on my mind. Something haunting me.
Evelyn, talk to me. Without fear of judgment.
I visited another one of my clients earlier today.
Someone high-ranking?
Not especially, but someone respected in the community nonetheless. A regular gentleman attached to me, but harmless. He came to me, drunken, spinning a story so horrible I thought he must have pulled it from the pages of the Penny Dreadful.
What type of story?
A story of a murder that hadn't yet been committed, but one that was to transpire this evening.
What?
He told me about a group of men who pay good money to watch terrible acts of depravity. He cited 2 previous examples. I'm sure you read about them in the papers. You remember the cabbie from Hammersmith whose corpse was paraded around town on the top of his Hanson until the police could subdue his horse?
I covered that one myself. I thought there was something different about it. There was more to that story too, but Van Proust from the Times, oh, he beat me to the chase.
Well, if this gentleman is to be believed, this next one will be just as sensational. It's also horrible.
Evelyn, tell me all about it. Everything. Everything there is to know.
But why? Why would you want to know? Surely if it's true, you'll find out soon enough.
Sure, but if I could be ahead of the game? Ahead of the Times or the Post? Just think of it. Sensational murder. The public has a thirst for blood, providing it isn't their own. Grotesque illustration on page 1 with all the dreadful details. Oh, I'd be promoted to features, more money. Evelyn, if I had more money, then we could have a future, couldn't we?
I exist well enough.
Yes, but you could get away from all of this. And settle down. With me.
Who hasn't dreamt of a new life?
A new life. I should never have written that article. I was thinking of myself. But I was thinking of Evelyn too. My editor was easily swayed to believe that what I had written was from a reliable police source. And when the murder was committed, right down to the most minute detail in the wretched plan, I didn't think this through very well, did I, gentlemen?
What do you make of it all, Holmes?
Enough of what I think, my dear Watson. What are your observations, my good fellow?
Oh, well, I'm convinced of Mr. Raleigh's innocence.
Yes, there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and furthermore, I think Miss Norwood, regardless of her profession, is an unfortunate casualty, dragged into this affair with no doing of her own.
Yes, quite unfortunate.
Yes. Look, I know how you feel about assumptions, but I think it's safe to assume that the relationship between Miss Norwood and the priest was anything but righteous.
Yes, well, he would not be the first man of the cloth to surrender to carnal temptation. But what are these other men, Watson? These shadow watchers, as you've romanticized them?
Yes. Oh, and the killer, of course.
I'm not so interested in him as much as his benefactors. No. This is a terribly dark business, Watson.
Yes, we must do all we can to bring it to an end, Holmes.
There is always a solution, my dear boy. But how much blood must flow in the interim?
How disappointing, my friends. He seems to have beat us to the chase. I'm afraid this evening's entertainment has been preempted. Let's all go for cake.
This leg, scars from my days in the mission. I must admit, gentlemen, that I'm rather hesitant to speak with you this morning. I've already given a lengthy statement to the police.
Yes, just a few minutes of your time, Cardinal, and we shall be on our way.
It's not a matter of my time, Mr. Holmes. At this point in my life, it seems I have nothing but time on my hands. It's the subject matter. It's obvious to us now that Father Anthony was a deeply troubled man with great inner conflict.
Why do you say he was troubled?
Despite the fact that I wear these robes, gentlemen, I am not so far removed from this world as to be unable to hazard a guess as to what Father Anthony was up to with this woman. But you must understand my position and the devastating impact such an indiscretion could have on our church. This institution of righteousness. Are you both righteous in your lives, gentlemen? So many have wandered so far from the flock.
Yes, what can you tell us about Father Anthony Jeffers?
Very little, I'm afraid. I didn't know him very well. He came to England from America some years ago, where he had worked for some time, traveling to various outposts, spreading the word of the Lord amongst the new settlers and the natives of that land. Prior to that, I don't know very much about him. It's my understanding that he was well liked by his congregation. I'd never heard a bad word about him. Of course, in light of recent events, well, he seems to have achieved his own penance.
Well, you say that, Cardinal, as if he deserved what I can assure you from a medical perspective was a very unpleasant end.
No, nothing so harsh. I merely refer to that very wise passage which states that we reap what we sow. But this is a tragedy, of course it is, gentlemen.
And what of you, Cardinal Orveston? Are you so deserving of your own scars?
Are you sure I can't offer you some tea before you leave, gentlemen?
Are we leaving so soon, Cardinal?
Yes, I think that you are.
That was uncomfortable, Holmes.
Yes, especially for the Cardinal. Now, why do you think that was, eh?
I think I know where your thoughts have turned.
Yes. Then you'll agree that this case seems to have taken a darker, more insidious turn.
Well, if you're right, yes. Oh, how absolutely daft of me.
Watson?
Well, I seem to have taken the wrong walking stick. And if I'm not mistaken, this could be the Cardinal's.
My dear Watson, there are times when you amaze me. And then there are moments such as these. A beacon of light, my dear fellow.
Oh, dear.
To make reference to the methods of Sherlock Holmes as eccentric would be to commit a gross understatement of the facts. And yet, While I cannot say that I always understood my friend's investigative techniques at the outset, I was always confident in the notion that he would consistently achieve the conclusions he sought. This case was no different. Firstly, there was the analysis of the mud wiped from the base of the Cardinal's walking stick. Holmes often proclaimed that he had the unique ability to identify dozens of variations of dirt from all over the city, nay, the country, and was able to determine the districts in which they originated. Then there was the poring through records, obscure volumes among both the city's and Holmes' own private archives. Curious and sometimes ancient texts, written by more curious and even far more ancient authors, some unknown, I suspected, to all but Holmes himself. And then there was the urgent summons for a jar of honey. Although that particular request was of lesser interest. And finally, there was the look, the intense glare in Sherlock Holmes' eyes when the pieces of the most intricate of puzzles assembled themselves before him. That is when I knew that.
The game's afoot, Watson.
This area is as secure as we're going to get it tonight. I hope your friend hasn't led us on a wild goose chase. What's he up to in there anyway?
I'm not entirely certain, Inspector. All he said was to ensure the exits to this building were covered. Anyone emerging was to be arrested as an accomplice to murder.
And what if he's unable to give us a signal?
We'll have to use our instincts. I'm afraid you'll have to do as I've done all these years, Inspector.
And that is...
Have faith.
Oh, well, that's being challenged tonight, isn't it?
I mean, faith in Sherlock Holmes.
Well, we're all here tonight, aren't we?
Thank you for joining me here on such short notice, gentlemen. I have called this session of our society as I believe winds have changed against our string of good fortune.
Changed?
We can exist only in the shadows. That has been the mandate of our society since its inception. Our identities are known only amongst ourselves, and those who fall out of league with us, well, the late Father Jeffers has been dealt with.
He was weak.
Quite so. That said, I regret to inform you that there is a man who presents a very real threat to us. One which may ultimately lead to shining a light on our excursions. His name is Sherlock Holmes. Perhaps you've heard of him.
This a blackguard from the Penny Dreadfuls?
I believe he may be a formidable foe.
Maybe our Austrian friend should take care of him.
I will see to it that he is dealt with. But the matter is pressing, as I believe he may be working in league with the police.
The police? But you assured us.
Relax, brother. We remain in control. Our influence is felt in many places, important places. But henceforward, any further outings may put us at risk of losing our liberty. But we've had an excellent run, gentlemen. We've achieved what we set out to do. Satisfied our cravings. Quenched our thirst.
It's not enough.
Caution, brother. Don't let the animal dominate you. 7 will have to suffice for now. It is the divine number. Perhaps a signal that speaks to the forgiveness for which we will all beg in our last minutes here on earth. let us take a moment to reflect upon our sins, and to remember those who have fallen to appease the beast which lies within each of us. The pauper in Whitechapel, he, of course, was the first and the most difficult. The old woman under the bridge at Hammersmith.
She was easy, a drunkard.
Yes, too easy.
The costermonger, the real women. And then there was the girl, the singer in Crow's Court. She was rather beautiful, wasn't she? As she died with her eyes open. Then finally the sin-laden woman and our fallen brother. An unfortunate turn of events. But we have prevailed, gentlemen. We have always prevailed despite our sins.
And now it ends.
For the time being.
And what are we to do in the meantime?
Return to your parishes, your duties. Wait patiently as wolves amongst the flock. And when the air has cleared, barring any further meddling, I will send the call out to you again.
And if the authorities come looking for us?
We have been very careful, and no blood has touched our hands. We are the last citizens of this sinful city that the police would consider pursuing. And if need be, it is the Austrian who will take the fall. We are not bad people. We are good men with a hunger that needed to be satiated. When the demon is quelled, then we can do good, unpersuaded by those unholy persuasions that lurk within. We wanted our taste of the underbelly of humanity. We have all suffered. Every one of us has suffered in the service of our Lord and Master. And we have shared a common outlet for that darkness. It may very well have been a sign from him.
I say, gentlemen, do you mind if I light my pipe? And such fine gentlemen we've had with us this evening. Father Stevenson of the Church of the Good Thief, and Father Chalmers of St. Barbara's, and of course, the good Cardinal Ulverston.
You should not be here, Mr. Holmes. Our membership is quite select.
Scoundrels and cowards, lurking in the shadows of London. Vile men, each and every one of you.
I take it there are police officers waiting outside.
At every entrance.
I see. And what of Father Giacomo, who you portrayed rather brilliantly, I might add?
Arrested earlier this evening. He was quite useful once lured from the shadows.
And there is nothing I have to say in my defense. How long until they come in here?
Once I give the signal.
What are you waiting for?
There are 1 or 2 points of interest I should like to clarify, if you wouldn't mind.
I am at your mercy, Mr. Holmes.
Tell me, when you lost your leg as a young man in Africa, is that when you first lost your mind?
You are cruel, Mr. Holmes.
It was the common thread that linked you with the other priests. During our earlier meeting, you had mentioned that Father Anthony Jeffers had served as a missionary in America. What you neglected to tell me was that he had suffered at the hands of the Iroquois whilst trying to convert them to his faith. He came to England a broken and scarred man.
He found strength amongst our brotherhood.
I found the similarities between you both rather curious, and began researching other members, leaders of your dioceses, men whose tormented minds might compel them to commit such ghastly acts against humanity. Father Harrison Stevenson suffered serious burns in a fire when his church burned to the ground. His misfortune occurred whilst trying to save the life of the organist who herself died in the blaze. Père Christophe Chalmers, thieves broke into his parish one evening and tried to make off with the poor box. He tried to stop them and was beaten near death in the process. Parasites nearly did Father Giacomo in Guyana, and the subsequent months of pain and illness robbed him of his youthful vitality, leaving him the broken shadow of the man that he once was. 5 exalted men, all in the same diocese and all scarred in both body and mind. They form a common bond and channel their suffering into the suffering of others. But why? Why?
And why do you think, Mr. Holmes,
because I think that you loathed your suffering, your sacrifice, the cost of your pledge towards goodwill, and wanted so much to witness the underbelly, the darker side of humanity, that dark side which has touched your life so profoundly.
I'll wager there's a demon inside you, one that could turn to the doctors with a proper persuasion. What of your sins, my son?
Who is your accomplice in this business?
Why don't you ask him yourself?
We've arrested 2 of them. Holmes says there should be a 3rd. What's happening in there?
I don't know. There's been no signal from Sherlock. I don't understand why it's taking so long. No. Something's not right. I know Holmes.
Wait! I'm the bloody policeman.
Holmes! Good old Watson.
The Cardinal is dead.
And dead men tell no secrets. Priests and cardinals. This has the potential to be a political nightmare. I've got a mess on my hands.
Well, here, drink this. It helps.
Oh, thanks. This has to be handled very delicately. Your usual fee, of course.
But we are to remain mum on the subject, of course.
Well, yes. And of course, we won't be reading about this in the Strand magazine.
Oh.
Right, Doctor?
Oh, yes, yes. I concur, Inspector. Yes, that's too sensational, eh?
Well, that's what got us here in the first place. We got a bloodthirsty public out there, gentlemen.
Quiet.
So, when did you first suspect the Cardinal?
Well, there was the limp, the false leg, which immediately brought to mind the prints that we discovered in Crow's Court. An analysis of dirt from the Cardinal's walking stick confirmed that he had recently been within the district of the Sainsbury killing.
Of course, many men have returned from the wars with serious injuries, and Crow's Court is well travelled. That's not a very strong indictment.
Quite right, my dear Watson. But I have long held that you can tell a great deal from a man's eyes.
What about the Cardinals?
Well, that's just it. They were cold, empty, deficient of those qualities often associated with members of the clergy.
Guesswork.
An informed suspicion, my dear Inspector Lestrade. And what a delicious disguise, gentlemen, hiding beneath the cloistered robes of the churches. Who would suspect? Once a profile had been established, it was fairly easy to compile a short list of potential co-conspirators, men who had suffered under their callings and who might have borne a grudge against humanity. Once we had the real Father Gianquomo in custody, we were able to learn some of the secrets of the Shadow Watchers, including the location of their secret lair.
He wouldn't talk to me.
Yes, well, our techniques may vary, Inspector Lestrade.
And the ghastly manservant?
Ah, yes, von Stillman, the Austrian strangler. Yes, a killer for hire with a lust for his craft. I have a file on him here somewhere, I believe. I recognized him immediately on account of his facial scarring, which was incurred during a botched robbery attempt in Vienna some years back.
I'd often suspected that he'd fled the country.
I've served in Afghanistan, and I've paid witness to some terrible crimes against humanity, but murder for sport? For diversion?
It's almost unthinkable, isn't it? That darkness of the human spirit. How many times I've stared into it.
Stared it down and triumphed, Holmes.
Yes. Invictus.
Well, gentlemen, the hour is late, and I have to have a report ready for my superiors. I don't believe that we will be reading about this in the newspapers. Remember, gentlemen, the gruesome details of these events do not leave this room. Good day, gentlemen.
Oh, good day, Inspector.
Well, another case has reached its denouement, my dear Dr. Watson. I think a short holiday to Conway might be in order. Yes. You know, they've recently unearthed the remains of a mummified bogman there that I should like very much to see. Yes. I can't think of a better way to spend some time.
No, not a half bad idea, Holmes. No. What am I going to do with all my notes on this, then?
Write it, seal it away, if it pleases you, if only for posterity.
Yeah. Perhaps someone in 100 years' time might find cause to read it. Imagine that. Our little stories in 100 years, Well, until then, I suppose.
Until then, my dear Watson, there is always Paganini.
Bloody Paganini.